Dear learners, in this video, we are going to simulate the IoT automations with the MQTT broker along with switch node, comment node, change node, and range node. And also we are going to see the interfacing of WebSocket node as a part of IoT Virtual Lab using Node-RED. So the objective of this session will be, we will be creating MQTT flow along with a switch node. Then MQTT flow is extended with the switch node, change node, command node and range node. And finally we are going to create a flow using WebSocket node. First let us create a flow inserting MQTT node, JSON node, switch node, debug node and command node. MQTT node, in node and out node configuration, you can refer the previous session. So the reference link is given here. You can refer this and you can watch this video how to configure this MQTT in and out node. So the server name here we are going to provide a broker.mqttdashboard.com and the client ID in the topic we are going to use as a speed sensor and we are going to connect a JSON. Next we are going to interface a switch node. Actually, switch node is going to help us to switch or to route the messages. Depending upon the incoming message property, we can route or we can switch the messages. Okay. So, for example, in our flow, we are going to create a flow with message payload.analysis property, and based on this value, it is going to route the message to one of its switch output. So we are going to have true and false conditions. So our switch node output will be holding two pathway. One pathway for deploying or identifying or routing your true condition. Another one is to deploying your false condition. Okay. These are the various values you could set for the switch node. I could design a switch node checking for the conditions equal to, not equal to, less than or equal to, greater than it is equal to, and few more properties could be set like hash key, is between, contains, matches, is true, is false, is null, is not null, is of type, is empty, is not empty. Okay, so these are the value rules we can set it. So out of this, in our example, we are going to concentrate on is true and is false. So based on the switch value we set, switch property we set, the number of output node for the switch will be extended. So switch node will help us to diagnose the data, or it will help us to route the data based on the condition evaluated. So in our example, we are going to take message.payload.analysis. So we are going to have two outcome. So if it is true, it is going to send different data. If it is false, it is going to send a different data. So you kindly click this property drop down. So you could get different variations of property. Out of this, you kindly select is true. So my first property is true. Now if I want to add the second property name, then you need to click add, which is available at the bottom layer of this property window. So here you just click add. Once you click add, then the next property will be added into the property window. So now in that also you need to configure it. So in the previous slide we configured for is true. So the first first output will be configured with checks for is true, and the second output will be checked for is false. So after that you just click done. So you just click done. Before you click done, you could see, since I configured two properties of this switch node, I'll be having two output node configured here. If I add one more here, then the switch node will get one more outcome here. Like this, the number of outlets for the switch can be configured based on this add button. So this add button enables us to identify, you can route your data to n number of devices. So then click done. So to visualize the output, we are going to insert the debug node. So just insert the debug node and double click it to change its property. Since I'm going to have true outcome, I'm going to change the name as debug name, one with the true, another with the false. So I could see a true debug monitor outcome and a false debug monitor outcome, which is connected directly to the switch. Then in this video we are going to learn about an important concept called comment node. So comment nodes are useful when you design a complex flow. So here I am designing a flow which is going to have two threads. One is for true case, another for false case. So if I want to comment the flow structure, I can use this comment node. So here I am going to use a comment node, two comment node I am going to use it. One for analyzing the true structure, true path, another one is for the false path. So true path and false path comment node has been configured. One point is you no need to wire this comment node. So comment node is like our comment line for our better understanding of the flow. Now flow design of the flow is over. We need to establish a connection in the Hive MQ. So if you want to check the configuration of Hive MQ, kindly watch this video. The reference link is given here. So you can establish a connection. After that you can send a JSON message here. So here I am going to send a message as analyze false and the value was 10. Okay, so if the analyze is equal to false, if the condition is false, the value is going to be 10. So that value I am going to pass it and I am going to publish it. So once you pass this value in the message and once you publish it, you could see the output seen in the debug monitor. So analyze false, value is equal to 10. So once you click this value, you could see which path has been configured. So this false path has been configured here. Similarly, the output could be monitored in the true path as well. So now you change the value as analyze equal to true in the Hive MQ and then publish it. So you could see the output is displayed as a true, analyze equal to true, and once you click this value in the debug monitor, you could see the true has been highlighted, stating that this path, the true path, has been configured to produce the output. Okay, so just this switch is going to help us. So based on the data we process it, we can route the data into different threads based on our requirement. So here we created two threads. One thread is for a true condition, checking for true condition. Another thread is for checking for the false condition. So this is the debug monitor with the true path. So if you want to have a comment node, you can have a comment node for your flow. So the properties of the comment node is you can set a name to it. So analyze true. So analyze true will give you the analyze true as your outcome in the flow. Next we are going to work with a change node. So now change node will allow us to change a message payload, or it helps us to add new properties. For example, in our previous content, we just pushed the data whatever has received from the Hive MQ. Now if you want to perform some analysis onto it, and if you want to trigger some more messages onto it, okay, that could be done using this change node. Okay, so we'll be seeing the exact flavor of deploying it in the node. So before we go into it, let us see what are the major properties it holds. Okay, change node will affect the properties in a message. There are three properties it holds. One is either by changing its existing one, or we can delete them, or it helps us for adding new properties. Okay, so these are the three important properties has been associated with the change node. You can either change the existing one, or you can delete them, or you can add your new properties. Okay, so I'm just repeat it again. Change node help us to perform some analysis and send the analysis based on the received data. So for that you just drag and place a change from the node palette, drag it, and you can directly place it in between your switch node and the debug node. If you just place it in the switch node and the debug node, Node-RED automatically configures the input and the output of the change node appropriately. So that is the beauty of the Node-RED. You no need to rewire it. When you keep it, the change node, in between the wires of switch node and the debug node, automatically it gets configured itself. Now I'm going to insert one more change node in the false path. So previously we inserted change node in the true path. We are going to insert one more change node in the false path as well. Same thing, I'm going to drag the change node from the node palette, and I'm going to place in between the switch and the false display monitor, debug monitor. So once you place it, now you can edit the properties of the change node. So double click it and edit the property. I'm going to keep the change node name as valid data and invalid data. So for true condition, I'm going to keep it as a valid data. For a false condition, I'm going to keep the name as a invalid data. So just set the property, then you can send the data, whatever data you like to configure. So now I'm going to configure the data. Speed data received is being analyzed. So this is the data I'm going to send. So along with the data sent by the HiveMQ, this data is also going to be produced in the debug monitor. So once you configure it, you just click done. Now you just set the value analyze equal to true and just publish it. Once you click the publish, you could see speed data received is being analyzed. So this data has been configured. This data has been configured through the change node. And you could see this analyze equal to true, true values equal to 100 is not displayed here. Okay, in order to display it, we need to do one more inclusion here. So you just wire all the component, you deploy it and publish it. So whatever you data publish here, based on the configuration with the change node, the data will be displayed here. So if you want this data, the whatever data you configured in the JSON content, also if you want to display it there, then we need to make one more changes. So before that, this is an output for the false analysis path. So for the false path, if the value is false, then I have been set with the change node is invalid, the speed data is not analyzed. So two threads has been created, one for true path, another for false path. So if the value has been set as false, then I have configured that invalid speed data is not analyzed. Like this is the value or data string I have been manipulated using change node. So as I discussed earlier, if I want to specify the data along the data which has been configured in the message HiveMQ also, then you need to say that you have to specify with message dot payload dot note. So if you keep that as a note, then along with the false, the value will be displayed. So just going back in the previous content, this analyze false and value was not displayed because note has not been configured in the change node. If you want this value to be displayed, then you need to make a dot note. So payload dot note, if you keep it, then along with the values, whatever values we are configuring the HiveMQ will be displayed here. So this change node is going to help us to streamline or to process the data. So analysis could happen using this change node. So I'm checking the data. So if my value is false, I'm going to send a data. I'm analyzing it. Yes, the data is false. So I'm going to send a message. I could route a separate message. Here I'm routing it as a invalid. Speed data is not analyzed. So this is the message displayed in your debug monitor. So far we have seen with switch node, comment node and change node. Now we are going to deal about the range node. Okay. So we have a special node in the node red called range node. While dealing with the real-time applications, most of the time the input from the sensor and the other devices, it need to be scaled as per the application requirement. So the scaling could happen using this node called range node. So range node in the node red, it helps and provides support to scale in a linearly way with respect to the input value. So with respect to the input value, the value will be scaled out linearly. And one important point is this node always works with numbers. So you should be very careful in sending the data to the range node. So whatever range you keep it, so it will deploy for the values you set it in the range node. The properties, based on the properties you set it in the node red, then that value will be scaled and that will be produced. So for example, I will go with an example. So before that, we'll see the range node property, action property. So it has three options. The default option will be set as scale the message property. So this scaling could happen based on the mapping given, and one default is it also maps outside the given ranges as well. If you are very particular with the range, then you have to select with the second option scale and limit to target range. So here the results will never go outside the range specified in the result range. And one more third option is there to wrap it out. Okay, so the results will be wrapped around with the result range. So we have three options like message property is a default, and second one is scale and limit to target range, and third one is scale and wrap with the target range. So here for our application we are going to take with scale and limit to target range, because we want to specify with the range limit. So just go to the node palette, drag your range as usual. You can keep it in between your change node and the debug node, so it will automatically reconfigure its wiring. So then double click its property, just get its property window. Now you just see you will get an action of scale and limit to the target range. Then you can set the range. So here the input range I have given as 0 to 10. From if the input range is 0 to 10, I want the target range ranging from 50 to 255. So this is what my scaling range is going to happen. So this is the input range and this is the target range. So from 50 to 255, I am going to scale it. Now click done. So once it is done, you could see the scaling is happened. I have given the name as scaler. So for that scaling, one important point, you take one more change node. So for that, I am just inserting one more change node for because it is going to work for a number. So I am going to take one more change node indicating its property as scaling factor. I have included one more change node and connected this range node with the scaling factor change node. So I'm just going to give a name as scaling factor and I'm just going to give done. Now deploy it and then you just publish it. So once you deploy and publish, now I'm giving the value is false. When the analyzed values is false and the value is 10, I'm going to scale the value as 50. So 50 was the value which has been given as a range in my range node. So this is how we could deploy and publish the values associated with this range node. So I'm just going to repeat. First we have inserted MQTT in MQTT out node. We just inserted an MQTT out node, and then we just inserted JSON node. So for MQTT out node, you need to configure its server path, is the topic values, everything we need to client ID, everything we need to configure. Then for JSON, we need to configure anything. So just drag and place this JSON node. Then you just insert a switch node. In the switch node, we are going to create a thread for two flow. One is for true, another for is false. In the edit properties of switch, using add, we could add n number of path. We can enable n number of path. Based on the number of path, the corresponding output lead will be produced in the switch node. So here I am going to send two paths, one path for the true condition, another complete path for the false condition. So if my flow goes with a complicated flow, then in order to have a better understanding, we will have comment node. So I am going to have two comment node here to specify the true path and the false path. So I am going to have one for specifying this is the path for true, and another one I'm going to specify this is the path for the false. So I have set two comment node here. Then there comes a need for a change node. If I want to analyze some data, and if I want to configure the data based on the analysis, you have a property, you have a special node called change node. Okay, so the change node helps us to configure the data. Whatever data has been analyzed, you can make a you can create a, it's called new messages. You can configure the new messages using the change node. So here I am going to send a valid data message. So here if I have to deploy a change node here, and I am going to deploy one more change node called invalid data. Then we are going to work with the range node. Range node is like a scaling. If I want to scale some input value, then we'll be using range node. So in order to have a range node which works only for number, I'm going to incorporate one more change node. So I'm going to use one more change node. The same output flow of the false is going to be connected as an input to the scaling factor. Scaling factor here is nothing but my change node. Okay, so the output of this change node I'm going to connect it to the input of the scale, because this will work only with the numbering. So that's what I'm creating a one more thread, because in the previous valid and invalid data change node, we configured some string values we configured here. So it may not affect your scalar, because scalar needs a numeric representation. So that's why I'm creating a one more scaling factor node here in order to make a in order to ensure that it works in the number system. So then I'm creating a one more output node, a debug node for it. So again it is a false category. So once you configure your value in the Hive MQ, so whatever the value you configure based on the publish, if analysis is equal to true, the data will be produced using this true configuration. Data will be produced in this true configuration path. If analysis is equal to false, then data will be produced in the false category, false path. So this is what our objective of this flow using your MQTT. So next we are going to explore about the WebSocket. WebSocket is also a communication protocol. Okay, here in this node RED, WebSocket will comes under two forms of node. One is WebSocket input node, another one is WebSocket output node. WebSocket input node is for listening any incoming data, and WebSocket output node is for sending data, such as if you want to broadcast any payload, to all the connected WebSocket, we'll be using WebSocket output node. So WebSocket output node will broadcast all the message payload to all the connected WebSocket. So this WebSocket nodes can be either configured as a server node or the client node. One pointer, server node will always try to listen to it, and we need to configure to the listen to type properties in the WebSocket, and for the client we need to configure connect to property type in the property of the WebSocket. So if you want to identify the WebSocket, you can go and filter it. So at the top of the node palette, there is a filter option. So if you type WEB, web, then the nodes associated with the web will be displayed here. So it will be easy for us to drag and place the required node. So in the node red, you have a filter window. So in the filter window above the node palette, you can type your required node name. So if I type web, then the corresponding to WebSocket in and WebSocket out, these two nodes will be selected in the node palette. So now it will be easy for me to drag it and place it. So I'm going to drag the WebSocket in and I'm going to drag the WebSocket out. I'm going to place it in the flow. Okay, so here extra one inject node is required to inject the data. So I'm going to select a inject node. So here I'm going to select a inject node and I'm going to configure the properties of the inject node. So name I'm going to keep it as a water level monitor, and the message I'm going to send is as water overflow indication. So I'm going to send a message called water overflow indication, and for every 3 seconds it is going to send. So I'm going to repeat the process. So this repeat interval I'm going to configure for 3 seconds in the inject node of the flow. So then click done. So payload name is done, payload value is done, the string value we configured it, then we kept with interval 3. So repeat interval 3 for 3 seconds, then done. Then double click your WebSocket in node. So both WebSocket in node and out node, it holds the same property window. Here you need to configure the WebSocket path. So it's very important. You have to specify the WebSocket path which was specified here, www.ss.echo.websocket.org. So you need to click the edit property of the path, then you have to give here, then you need to click update. So similarly for the WebSocket out properties also you have to select it. So before you go with the, before you close this property window, you have to make sure you have to keep this type is equal to listen on, and then the path is this one, echo websocket.org. Then I'm going to give the name as a water monitor WebSocket, then click done. So type has to be specified, path has to be specified, and the name I'm specifying it, then click done. So it will be common for both WebSocket in and WebSocket out property. Only the type will be varied based on the requirement. So WebSocket in property, same thing, you can give the type, path, name and done. So now you just wire it and you just deploy it. So after wire and deploy, you could see the water flow indication is displayed in the debug monitor. So one important point you could see, now water level monitor, the inject node is directly connected with the WebSocket node, but this WebSocket node is not at all connected with the message payload, but the WebSocket node of out has been configured with the payload. Okay, so data gets communicated via WebSocket and that will be displayed in the debug monitors. There is no wiring happens between this between the inject node and the payload. Okay, but the data gets displayed because of the interference of the WebSocket. So the data whatever is injected in the inject node, it gets floated through WebSocket and it has been received from the WebSocket node and it will be displayed in the message payload. So that's all about in today's learning. So we learned about the various nodes associated with the MQTT node, switch node, change node, comment node, range node. Then after this we just had WebSocket node as well. So the task using MQTT protocol and all the whatever nodes you wanted, using inject node or function node, whatever nodes you wanted, you use the necessary nodes, and you should use the switch node, change node and a comment node. Design a smart marking system for a shopping mall. So here you need to configure two pathway. One is whenever the car is parked in the allotted boundary, if it is correctly parked in the allotted boundary, then send a message as thank you, you are smarter to the owner or the driver. Else if the car is not properly parked in the allotted boundary, if it crosses the boundary, then send a message, please be smarter in parking to the owner and driver, and also send a area range allotted to the car. So if a 5 cross 5 area is allotted to a car, you kindly send. So based on the range it, you just configure your value and send the value. Okay. Then using WebSocket node, you send the daily report to the smart parking system details to the technical team, and make sure your output will be displayed in the monitor, UI and Hive MQ messages. So let us have a demo. I just kept open my node configured in the flow. So just drag and place your MQTT node, double click it, and you just set the properties as usual. So I'm editing it. So the server name is broker.mqttdashboard.com and the port number is 1883, and client ID I'm going to give it as RFID reader. Then time to live is 60. Then keep clean session as active. If you want, you can keep your legacy 3.1 support active. Then click update. Then you just make sure this is available here, RFID reader. I'm going to give this topic name as speed sensor. QoS is tool, so quality of service is tool, and auto detect string I'm going to keep it as it is. The name I'm going to give it as a speed sensor. If you want to change the name, even you can change your name here. So I'm just going to give an automation here. So it got configured. Okay, so then I've connected a JSON here. Then a switch node. So you can have a switch node here. You just drag it and place a switch node. Double click the switch node. So you can give the switch node as analyzing node. Okay. So now we'll just keep the payload property as payload.analysis. Then just click this property. So select is true. Okay. Select is true. Then you just click add here. Then select this option. Then select is false. So the previous condition was true. I am keeping the second flow as false. So my first flow will be true and my second flow will be false. So once this is done, you just click done. So then I'm going to insert a change node. So I just drag a change node and keep it in between these two wires. Then double click your change node. I'm going to give the name as a valid data. So if I want to display the content, I'll be using payload.node. Then I'm going to give the details as feed data received is being analyzed. So this is the data. After analysis, this is the data I'm going to produce it in the debug monitor. Then give done. So a debug monitor, I'm going to give the name here as true. So true path, I'm going to give as true path. So just give done. Then one more change node here for the invalid data. I'm going to give invalid data. Again payload.move. So here I'm going to give the display as invalid speed data is not analyzed, and then just give done. So here I'm going to give the name as false path, then give done. So now the output of this node, I'm going to take it to one more node called change node, one more change node and configure it here. So now I have not given anything here. I'm going to keep it as a number. Okay, so kindly keep this as a number. I'm going to name it as a scaling factor because I'm going to work with the range node. So you just drag down. You have a range node here. You drag it and keep the range node here. Double click your range node, then keep your message payload as it is. Then as I said, there are three options are available. Scale the message property is the default one, followed by scale and limit to the target range is the second one, and third one is scale and wrap within the target range. So if you want to wrap, you can go with the third option. Now I want to specify with the limit of the target range, so I am going to the second option. Then you can give the limit as 0 or 10, any input range you can give it here. I am going to give it from 0 to 10. If the value is from 0 to 10, I am going to scale it from 52 to 55. So this is the scaling value I have given, and I am going to give the name as a scalar. Just see this node only works with number. It is also specified in the edit properties of the range node. It works only with the number. So then give done. Then import one more debug node. So double click it. So I'm going to give the path as false path range. So in order to differentiate those two, I'm just giving a range false path. Okay. Then you can bring down, you can come down. You could see a comment node here. You just drag it and place a comment node. Then you can give the name as true path comment node. Anything you want to give it, you can give it here. So I am giving a true path comment node. So that was specified here. And similarly, you can name it as false path. Then give done. So all the changes have been done now. So my flow is ready for deployment. You kindly deploy now. Deploy. Deploy. So go to debug. Now you just go to WebSocket Hive website. Just connect it. Then I'm just going to give the topic name as sweet sensor, which was specified there. Then the analysis is false and value is 10. So if I publish it here, I could see. So I have this, since I specified with the note, the analysis false and value is specified, and it is, see, you could see a red dotted line in the false path, and the value was specified as a 50. So this has been done for that path, invalid data path of false path, and this has been for the false range path. This has been produced with false range path based on the range. So this is how we'll configure this range path change node and the switch node in the flow. So Nick, now I'm going to disable it. The other way of disabling your flows, you can open this info flow, then you can make a deactivation, disable it. So this will get disabled. Then you can go with the WebSocket. So WebSocket, in order to get the WebSocket, you can go and filter here and I'm typing WEB. So when I type WEB, the WebSocket nodes will be displayed. So I can drag it and place it here. So once this is done, I can select my inject node as well and drag it and place it here. So for this inject node, I'm double clicking it and checking with water level monitor. I'm sending a data as water overflow indication. I'm going to repeat it for an interval for every 4 seconds. I'm going to deploy the water level overflow indication to the customer. So click done. Then this just double click your edit WebSocket node, out node and in node. So type is listen on and you just edit here, you just configure the website address was specified here. Then the payload, we are going to send the receive the payload, so no need to configure, it was the default setup, you just skip it as payload itself. Then update, then I'm just given the name as water monitor WebSocket, so you can give as in, then give done. So once you give it, it gets connected automatically. Same thing, you can select configure for the out as well. Same website payload update. Then you can click done. Then drag and place a payload, message payload, then wire it. So now my complete flow is over. You can deploy it. So once your deployment is over, you just inject the node. Before I inject, I'm just let me delete all the area data. Now just inject the node. So once you start inject the node, so WebSocket is closed. So it started floating in. So water overflow indication has thrown for every 4 seconds. It is just throwing. That's all about the WebSocket. Thank you so much. Thank you.